They call me crazy cause I'm facing all my giants. They try to scare me into thinking I can fight it. They tell me I should never even think of trying. But that's just me, I'm gonna live out in defiance.
Hey everyone, Big Jason. Welcome to the Breakthrough Email Marketing, the Breakthrough Email Deliverability show today with my special guest from Kickbox, Al Iverson, Director of Deliverability, and Jennifer Nespola Lantz, VP of Deliverability. Al, I've known him for probably, maybe even 10 years. We first met at the Marketing Sherpa / Mech Labs Email Summit. He was head of deliverability for ExactTarget, which was acquired by Salesforce. He's been doing deliverability for over 20 years. And then we have Jennifer Nespola Lantz, VP of Deliverability, I believe well over 10 years, formerly of Axiom Digital. Is that correct, Jennifer? Jennifer, are you there?
Jen, can you hear me? Let me see what's going on here. Try to get her on the chat.
While we get Jennifer situated, Kickbox is this amazing suite of deliverability tools. I use it myself. I use it for all my clients. It's what helps me identify some major problems with some top email providers who, promised the world, but they didn't have their authentication down. And there's my clients who are having a lot of issues. And so it's great for inbox testing. It's great for, Jennifer's back. It's great for blacklist monitoring, DMARC monitoring, reputation monitoring. So if you see the links on the top, they have a free spam score checker at bemclick.com/spam checker, bemclick.com/spam checker. They'll give you a seed email to send a real email test. So you may have seen some people making lots of claims, and you can tell that they really don't know what they're talking about because they send not a real test to their email. And you can actually see in brackets the email that comes to their inbox says test. That's not the same IP address. You want to send a real email to this test email that they give you, and it'll report back on any issues that you have. Jennifer, you are muted. Let me try to unmute you. Let me go to the split screen. Jennifer, are you there? All right, Al, do you want to go ahead and start, and hopefully Jen will get her audio going?
Yeah, let's do that.
Okay. Sorry about that. And guys, and again, bemclick.com/spam checker. It's for free. It tells you a lot of good information. It'll help you get the basics down if you don't have that going. And then bemclick.com/kickbox. bemclick.com/kickbox. That's my link. Again, I use it. You'll get 10% off if you want to check out their full suite of deliverability testing tools, email verification. You get 1,000 email verification credits, and that'll give you a full seed list to do some really robust insight into your ESP's sending pattern for your emails. So, Al, let's go to you. So why don't we just start off with the basics? I know a lot of people, when they're talking about deliverability, they're intentionally or unintentionally mentioning Gmail tab placement and trying to associate that with deliverability. But from your perspective, what is email deliverability?
So, email deliverability is all about measuring to make sure that you're actually getting to the inbox or not, right? Because an email sending platform, whether it be an ESP or a CRM, is really only going to be able to tell you, did we hand the message off to the remote ISP? right? Did we hand the message off to Gmail or Yahoo or Microsoft? But they don't get any sort of disposition information back beyond that. You capture bounces, but it doesn't tell you if it doesn't bounce, it doesn't tell you what folder it went into, right? So you can't tell if you actually got the message in front of the person that like you wanted to. So that's where deliverability and by extension deliverability testing comes into play, right? So deliverability is sort of the practice of how to get mail successfully delivered to the inbox, and tools like Kickbox are, Kickbox is a set of deliverability tools meant to help you sort of measure that, tell you, are you actually getting into the inbox or not?
Great. And speaking of your tools and deliverability testing, I know we've talked about this before where you can, sort of test Gmail tab placement, but it's more of a vanity metric because, seed lists are not going to act like real people. They're not subscribed to different lists in your market. As opposed to inbox testing, whereas, if someone signs up with the email, they have the default spam settings, that should actually give you a real usable, kind of like a gauge, maybe not 100% correlation, but if you're hitting 10% or 90% of your emails are going to the Gmail spam filter from the seed list, that should give you a pretty reliable indication that there's an issue, right?
Exactly. So you can't actually measure every individual person's inbox. And so Gmail in particular, to your point, is very user centric, like it's very focused on individual user feedback. So the best you can do is look at what are the default settings or what's going to happen in a default scenario where nobody has ever expressed a preference about your email messages. Because if somebody is already opening and clicking your email messages, for those people, it's more likely to go to the inbox at Gmail in particular, right? But for the rest of the people who are not responding to every email, how is Gmail going to treat that when they don't have enough individual bits of feedback from each individual person to decide on that per individual basis where to put the message? And so that's where it falls back to the default settings. What is Gmail going to do for everybody else who's never expressed a preference? And that's what you're trying to measure. So like you say, it's not going to be 100% accurate, but it's going to be significantly accurate because it's really all about, think about what's your best click-through rate or open rates, and you amortize that over time. You're going to have your biggest chunk anywhere from 60 to 80 to 90% of people are not interacting with messages. So how does Gmail treat it in that scenario? That's where the defaults come into play, and that's how you measure that. So that's where like when people nitpick and they say, well, inbox testing, seedless testing is never going to be 100% accurate. They're kind of right, but it's got an asterisk next to it. That's they're sort of nitpicking. It's as good. This is as good as you can get to actually monitor what's going on.
Great. And you want to speak a little bit more about the difference between that and as far as inbox or tab placement in Gmail and how Gmail measures that? Why do people, they set up a fake Gmail account that's just for checking testing. They don't really read or write or click anything, and they do some magic and it switches from promotions to primary. But then when someone else who has a real inbox that's opening and clicking, it doesn't go to their primary, it goes to the promotions.
Exactly. And so you will run into people that say, we know exactly how to get it to always go to the primary tab. And they're either lying and wrong, or they're right today and they're not going to be right tomorrow. Because it's a bit of an arms race kind of thing where if somebody found some magic code or way to do the HTML that makes it go in there today, that's great, man. Good for them. But the problem is Google is ever updating all of their filters, including the filters that tell which tab a message is supposed to go to. So that's always changing based on what Google thinks is the best thing to do. And if they find from scanning messages, if they find that messages look like they're very sales oriented, marketing oriented, and they're not going into the promotions tab, they're more likely to put those messages into the promotions tab later. So it's really it's a case where people talk like you can just magically find the switch and switch it and it's always going to happen. It doesn't really work that way. I had one guy the other day say, well, we helped 50 clients do it, and they always get primary tab. And the problem is they're doing robotic stuff that Gmail does not like, and it is not sort of long-term success. where they just rotate through 1,000 different ways of putting HTML together or trying to rewrite the message 1,000 different ways. And when you run into new tools like all the cool AI stuff and ability to make a zillion different variations, yeah, you can get away with that for a little bit, but it's not like I said, it's not a long-term success thing because it's very much like an arms race. What you figured out today, Gmail's going to figure out tomorrow.
Right. And I have my theories, but why do you think that some customers of these Gmail promo tab, quote unquote, experts, I was literally at an event and this guy was like, I paid thousands and I'm always in the primary tab. And I went to my inbox because I knew I was on his list. And literally every single email in the month of this last July was in the spam folder.
See, that's the individualistic nature of Gmail's filters, right? If whoever this guy's paying the money to, like you said before, he trained his test accounts to always put them in the primary folder tab rather, but he's not really changing the algorithm, right? He's not changing the universe to put it all in the right place as much as he wishes he was. And a lot of these guys do that too, or they'll like you said, they'll be able to do it in some mailboxes and not all, or they'll get away with it for a day, a week, or a month. And Gmail hates this stuff. They get really mad at it. The people don't always realize that because they don't see Gmail getting mad at it. It's not like somebody shows up their house with a baseball bat and starts beating the snot out of them, right? It's like it takes time. It's like if you speed every time you drive, if you speed, the more often you speed, the more likely you're going to get caught eventually, right? But if you only do it once in a while, you only do it a little bit, you're not going to get caught every time. It's the same thing with doing bad stuff with email marketing, right? The Gmail doesn't catch you eventually, but when they do catch you, it's bad. And that's where, like, I saw one of these tools got yelled at by Google and actually got kicked out of using the Google API to try to automate this sort of exact thing, the primary tab versus promotions tab.
Yeah, and what's funny is this customer of this Gmail promo tab, quote unquote expert, he's saying this at this live event. I saw him like within a month later on a live stream. So some people listening might be like, well, Jason, like you said, Gmail is very personal and it might just be you. But he was on a live stream repeating these claims and two different people said, dude, like all your emails are in my spam folder. So my theory is, Al, what do you think? Is that customers or believers in this, which I have to admit, like I told you on LinkedIn, I was the exact same way in 2013 when it first came out. I was running around like Chicken Little, and I was doing my own private test accounts. And then our mutual friend Dennis Damon, and in fact, a literal person that worked with Gmail tabs at a Mech Labs conference pulled me aside and said, you're wasting your time. That's not how it works. It's very personal to the person and what they're doing, blah, blah, blah. There's no way you can replicate that anywhere else. And I went on, that same company that had the biggest concern as me, went on to do their biggest launch in company history, which was about 500,000. The very next month we did 750,000. The very next month we did 1 million. And every single email of theirs went into my promo tab.
And that's the point, right? Gmail's not trying to hide messages from you. They're trying to organize them. And the goal there is to make their own users happy. And when users turn tabs on, right, because they can turn tabs off, and when users don't move stuff around, because they can move stuff around and change what goes to what tab themselves if they want, they're not doing that, and their messages are going to that promotions tab, and people are opening the messages in the promotions tab and clicking through and buying off of it. That's considered working as designed. So in other words, back to the core point there, it's like Gmail's not trying to hide the messages from people. They're trying to organize it so that it's where they think people want it. And that's a key point with tabs. If you hate tabs, you can turn tabs off, right? It's been years now, but one of the last surveys said like at least a good third of people turn tabs off. So if people don't want them, they know how to get out of it. But it's really, you got to remember, it's not a sender's game. It's a recipient's game. And Gmail and a lot of the people who are still buying from those messages are making it very clear that that's where they want to push those messages in the specific promotions tab. Now, you can try to make them less sales like. I mean, the promotions tab is all about selling, right? So if you want to make your message less about selling, but try to make it look more like one-to-one communication, remove links, remove call to action, stuff like that. You can do that, but it sort of undercuts the whole point of email marketing, right? If you're trying to make money from email, you want it to be as properly and appropriately promotional as possible. And if you're going to do that, it's going to end up in the promotions tab.
Yeah, and I remember very early on, I believe it was 2013. It had nothing to do with the promotions tab, but you remember Lyris?
Yeah.
Yeah, so a speaker from Lyris was talking about how, and this is like 2013, so this is really crazy back then, but instead of putting a link to a survey on a page, they literally put the survey in the email, like with the JavaScript and everything. It wasn't like you click on a link and it tags you. Like literally the JavaScript was in the email, and he talked about the 75% boost in people taking the survey. And he didn't say anything about deliverability. And that was my biggest thing. I was like, oh my gosh, he's probably got slammed. And I talked to the speaker afterwards, and he's like, oh yeah, that single email, it had terrible deliverability. But like I said, 75% boost in lift. He's like, did we do that every single email? No, it was a once in a while thing. So that's what I tell my clients is like, you got to have a balance. You know, you get so strict and you want to be so non-salesy, you know, is the ROI really worth it, you know, versus finding a balance?
Exactly. And the other thing I'd add to that too is like these things change over time, right? So if you magically figured out how to get it to go exactly where you want tomorrow, don't assume you can just do the exact same thing for the next 10 years and get the exact same results, because Gmail and everybody else are always updating those filters and changing their mind. And even they make mistakes sometimes, right? So you could even be doing something right and have that sort of change unexpectedly. So that's where monitoring comes into play. You got to make sure you actually know what's happening with messages as much as possible to be able to react to spam filter changes and screw ups and so forth.
Right. Along those lines, let's talk about, you know, what problems could be happening if you have this mindset of, you know, constantly trying to trick Gmail, assuming Gmail is the only, you know, inbox provider you have to worry about. You know, why are these people sometimes a lot going into spam for multiple people? Number one, my theory is that this is a crutch. Their magic text or magic trick, it's a crutch. They think that's it. I'm good to go. You know, my my fake test account is good, so it means all my subscribers are good. That's one. And two, I think they're just not very knowledgeable, because as we know, just because someone has a Gmail address doesn't mean they're checking Gmail. Like you already said, a third of people have turned tabs off already. You know, people are using Apple Mail to check their Gmail. So you have an Outlook to check their Gmail. So you're literally focused on this imaginary problem with Gmail promotions folder when you actually could be having deliverability problems to Outlook and Apple. What are your thoughts on that?
Exactly, very much the case, and that's going to happen more and more. I think because you look at the vast majority of mobile users um, are, well, you know, if you look at it globally, Android in theory has broader market share, but when it comes down to people with money who are actually responding to marketing, it tends to be more iOS, tends to be more Apple users. And even though there's Gmail client and different clients for Apple iOS, everybody tends to just use the Apple Mail. So, like you say, yeah, it's Gmail, but it's pulled through Apple Mail, and so that makes it sort of an amalgam of two different sets of rules, two different sets of filtering and rules as to how they deal with messages. Like you said, Apple doesn't have tabs. Apple doesn't have tabs for that. So Gmail coming through on mobile is going to just show up in the inbox. There's nothing but the primary inbox there on a mobile app, so you're going to be fine. The other thing that I found too is, you know, like you said, people get into this crutch where they rely on special code or some other weird trick that they think is going to get them to the right tab forever. What tends to go wrong there is not only that code and trick tends to sour after time, but then people with really strong and sort of unchecked crazy affiliate programs tend to fall in a hole there too, where like I've had clients where just out of nowhere. Even either all the stuff they're showing me is 100% opt-in, or could even be double opt-in, just straight normal marketing, nothing strange about it at all. But Gmail absolutely hates their domain reputation. And a few of these, especially the first few times I ran into this, take months to figure out that, oh, they also have a really robust affiliate program that they don't police and is out of control. And some of the partners, some of the affiliate partners are doing bad stuff. And so basically the net is that their domain is showing up in this other spam that's getting sent to Gmail, and it's pissing Gmail off so much that it makes their core marketing efforts actually suffer from that. It was crazy the first time I ran into that. Like the client's doing everything right, we can't find anything wrong related to their domain, and then sheepishly at the end of it they go, oh well, what about our affiliate program? And they start showing us the messages that are being sent there, and it was just the absolute worst of the worst, the bottom scraping garbage. So for me, it was important to remember that anybody sending mail that talks about you, that links to you, you got to have some sort of control over them to make sure they're doing best practices right, or it can hurt you.
That's a great point. I was going to bring that up later, but this is the perfect opportunity. Yeah, I've had a lot of clients where, I search my Gmail spam folder and I don't find emails sent from them, but I see, sometimes more than one affiliate. And, you don't expect affiliates to use your swipes exactly, but they were just making all kinds of crazy claims. The not the from email, but the from name. They were putting the product author as the from name. And it's like, do you know that, they're representing you, and that their emails, they're not even written as they're from the affiliate. They're writing as you, the from name, the email, making all kinds of claims that you don't even say. So yeah, it's really important to make sure you got your affiliate terms and conditions set up so that they have to agree to that, to only do this and not do that when they sign up.
Exactly.
All right. Okay. So I'm going to pull up in a second here your free tester and your deliverability suite. Do you want to talk about that real quick? Let's start with the free tester.
Sure. So free tester is a little thingy I built that kind of gives you a set of scores, pass, fail, measures on a whole bunch of different stuff that it pulls from the headers and the body, and you're sending IP and you're sending domain for an email message. It's not quite the same as proving whether or not your mail got to the inbox. But what it is it checks all of the technical underpinnings that a good sender has to have in place before they're going to have success. In other words, you'll see sometimes people confuse this, right? So it's kind of, the message can get a little complicated, but it's stuff like, your DKIM and SPF authentication, making sure you have all the right headers like list on sub, and make sure messages are actually using TLS and transmission. None of that stuff individually guarantees inbox placement, but the reverse of it is true, that the more of it you're missing, the harder it is to get to the inbox. So again, it's not a real inbox test, but it's a good way to quickly check for obvious failures that from a technical perspective can make it harder to get solid inbox placement.
Got it. I actually found a screenshot of an actual test. So let's go over that. I just want to blur the domain name. So you're not just a deliverability as far as a strategy standpoint. You're a tech. You're a nerd, right?
A little bit, yeah. Like the KBX score thing, I did actually build the score thing myself, and
nice.
I'm sort of a half-assed developer. I'm not really an engineer. There's people who are a lot better at doing development stuff than me, but I've been around the technical bits of email long enough that I can be dangerous when I have to be.
Nice. Because I was going to ask you a more technical question. So a lot of people, they've seen, me mention my certifications of online testing and everything else from Mech Labs. And so they've actually asked me if you're always ranting against, these people lying and making misleading claims about the Gmail promo tab. Have you ever tested it? And I said, well, I thought about it once, and here's what I came up with. I said, well, first of all, I would have to send a survey, and I'd have to have people tell me that they use Gmail tabs only, And then I'd have to, so I'd have to do a 50-50. Then I have to separate the prospects versus the customers because we know they react differently. And then I'd have to make sure that when I sent it, they still opened it up on Gmail tabs and, versus mobile versus desktop. And even then, the test question is, which email is going to perform. Like, even you have to assume that the people that bought got the version with the code, and you have to assume the placement because you, unlike the people claim, you don't even know that they saw it in the promotions versus the inbox. So yeah, there's really no way to test it.
No reliable way to do solid A/B testing. It's unfortunate, because it would be neat if you could get a temporary code from Google just to sort of put that to bed, right? Because you could show that, yeah, you might get an initial uptick in opens and clicks on primary because maybe your average user might find it faster than they would have normally if it's going to the promo tab. Totally guessing. But at the end of the day, if these are the same consumers that wanted the messages, all of the other like research and stuff from Google, from different ESPs, etc., says ultimately the same number of people are going to open your messages. You're going to have a high rate of opens. You're going to have a high rate of clicks. And at the end of the day, like I said, maybe you get people, maybe you sort of front load engagement a little bit by if you could somehow do half of it and make sure that half does go to the primary tab. But beyond that, you're going to end up with the same sort of sales results just based on and everything we've read. And again, once in a while, you get somebody who's unhappy about it, and maybe they know something I don't know. I don't know everything, but all the people that I've helped to success have been doing just fine, even when their mail's going to the promotions folder, or a promotions tab rather. Like you said, revenue still gets driven, so I don't.
Right.
There's not a problem there that I can find.
Now I was talking with another friend, Mark Goldman, and he said he had a partner in one of his companies that was like a technical guru engineer type, and he studied and he could never get reliable placement in the primary tab no matter what he did because it is always changing.
Yeah, and even if he figured it out today, it's not going to last forever. Like you find weird stuff where like there used to be strange stuff where like if you stop using DKIM authentication, you can sort of separate your domain rep from a bad past, and so you can get away with that for a while. But even some of that stuff where they might even let you do a few messages, but they're not going to let you do hundreds of messages or thousands of messages. And the thing about Gmail, in particular, over the past year or 2 years, they have gotten tighter and tighter about what they will block and what they will filter. There is stuff in the past that they never would have blocked people for, and today they block people for it. And that's only going to keep ramping up. So any sort of tricks you find to sort of slide your way through the slats of the fence, they're just getting fewer and fewer.
Right. Oh, I'm almost done blurring everything because this free test is actually pretty robust. So I just want to make sure I can grab everything, especially from the provider.
I can share one off of my screen if you want. We can pull up. I signed up for a bunch of lists for these just so we have sample messages to look at. I've got one from Wired Magazine sitting right here. There's nothing too secret in there if you want.
Yeah, let's do that. Go ahead and share your screen.
Let's give her a shot here.
How are we? While you pull that up, along the lines of the Gmail promo tab, it's interesting that people that are all into the Gmail promo tab are also into fake domain warming services that you kind of mentioned. Like one of them was already banned, and the same person that made these claims about the Gmail promotion versus primary, but was ending up in spam for multiple people, also claimed, oh, look, I got, X% priority inboxing using, I won't say the name, but it was like a warm-up service. And I looked, and he was using the exact same sending domain that he uses for his regular ESP. And I was just like, what are you talking about? First of all, those services are for cold email. So there's no way that you could ascertain how much it improved the sending from your regular ESP, right?
Exactly. It's one of the things where they actually using as cold, it's the same thing.
You broke up.
it's a good way here. Here.
Your
So it's one of the things where
your audio is garbled right now.
have it. Okay, let's.
Let me stop sharing.
Oh, there you
Does that
go.
sound better?
Yeah, it's better.
All right. All right. So sorry about that. Well, apparently I can't share screen and talk at the same time, unfortunately. But the thing with the those cold leads tool, when you're doing that with your same domain, you get people who just haven't hit the tipping point where they start to have problems yet, right? Like they send 50 messages or 100 messages or 2,500 messages to a lot of cases to these fake test mailboxes like we were talking about before. But so they see these initial results and they think, oh, it's going great. And you just haven't gotten caught yet. Like you're really risking it. That's Jen. It's a shame Jen's not here. One of the things Jen does here for Kickbox is she scopes out all of the deliverability consulting engagements that her and I and a couple other people actually execute those engagements to help consult people back to deliverability health. And we've gotten to the point where we just turn down people who come to us with cold leads problems because they're really it's exactly that. You start out fine, you do a little bit of it, you get away with it, but then you start going up to higher volumes, and eventually you sort of fall off the cliff. And then the only fix is to stop doing that. So it's one of those things where like people don't want to hear that. I'm like, I don't want to. We're not like trying to change their religious point of view on it or anything
Right.
like that. They come and they say we want to know how to keep doing the 37,000 cold leads a day like we were doing there for the first couple of weeks. And like, God bless you, but I can't fix that.
All right, I'm ready to share my screen. Let's try that. There we go. Let me do. All right. So I can scroll wherever you want me to go. What's interesting here is this really helped my client because for months they had been emailing from the wrong from email. It wasn't part of the verified domain on the account. And there was hitting my spam folder on multiple accounts, and the provider was like, "Oh, well, yeah, you have to do verified domains, but when you actually send the campaign, we actually let you use whatever domain you want." And I'm like, "Okay, that's weird." I said, and then they said, "Well, we checked your reputation, your IPs, everything seems okay." And I had already done this. I'm like, "What are you talking about?" Like, the SPF wasn't set up correctly and lots of stuff. And then I got this report to show them.
Yeah, that's where it comes in handy to always check a real message. That's why I built this tool. But even if you're not using a tool, at least send to a Gmail and look at the headers, right? And view the source there and see what you can learn from that, because it'll have a bunch of stuff. It says pass, fail. That's where this starts. We add more stuff on top of it. But that's the thing that the support people sort of fell into that trap of. We look at what we think is set up, and we said it's okay, it's fine. There must be no problem. But as opposed to what was actually being sent. I had another client literally just yesterday or the day before yesterday with the exact same problem as you. He didn't realize why he was getting all these errors with the domain name he didn't recognize. It was what had happened is somebody, when they set up this configuration in Salesforce Marketing Cloud, however many years ago, the first setup they made, they typoed the domain name. So it's email-company.com instead of mail-company.com. And so no matter and so the guy was just manually, whenever he was doing sending, he'd manually send it to the right one. But then a couple days ago, they had a person start, and he was going through and setting up a whole bunch of new automated sends, and he picked the old wrong domain name. So suddenly they started getting all these errors. They don't know why. They ask for support's help, and support says, well, no, everything looks right. This is the domain name. This is what you're supposed to be using. But when they actually looked at the headers of the actual messages sent, they were sending from the wrong domain name. So even a brand that's been around forever and knows what they're doing and has been on Salesforce Marketing Cloud for years and years, thinks the stuff is all set up in the past and you're good to go.
Right.
You still got to monitor it from time to time because stuff can go wrong.
Yeah, and what's worse is that this incorrect domain name, it was literally because they had changed staff who send the emails, and so they literally were just misspelling it every single time on accident. and the domain didn't even exist.
Yep. Same deal for mine, man. It's funny. We're talking about two totally different companies that literally did the exact same thing.
Yeah, it was literally just the domain was the letters were rearranged.
So what does that tell you? It means, I think it tells you check for the obvious stuff and don't assume that you're covered just because somebody tells you you're covered. Make sure you can test it yourself. Well, of course I want you to use our tools because I like money, but no matter what you do, make sure you're using some tool out there. You're doing some way to check it, looking at real headers, making sure the domain names are expected, making sure you can see the DKIM signature, making sure it says SPF pass. Like I said, whether you're looking at headers or whether you're using a spam checker tool like this, we'll pull it all out for you and lay it all out nice there. But the key there is making sure you're looking at all of this stuff that, again, none of this guarantees inbox placement, but it sure messes up inbox placement if you get it wrong.
Yep. And it says, once you talk about this, it says SPF pass, but this was a dedicated IP where they were supposed to add a SPF record authorizing this ESP. So they were still using the ESP, they hadn't really set up the SPF at all. What are the benefits? Like ActiveCampaign says, do you want us to handle everything or do you want to do it? And I know Dennis has said, that's fine. It will work. It's not the end of the world. But yeah, if you have the ability to change your DNS records and add the proper DKIM and SPF, he would advise it.
Definitely. And it's sort of a forward-looking configuration instead of the way they used to do it years ago. And so if you customize the SPF so that it's your domain, not the provider's domain, and make sure same thing with the DKIM, because some of the providers will put in a default DKIM. Some of the like Klaviyo or SendGrid or some of the other ones, they'll put a default DKIM domain in there if you don't set up your sending domain and fully configure the authentication, they're doing it because it's better than nothing. Mm-hmm. But if you set it all up as you and you make sure it's only your domain, that means you don't get snarled up, wrapped up into other people's domain problems. Like if you are a big, a giant provider, whether that be, Klaviyo or MailChimp or Salesforce Marketing Cloud, right? They've all got shared IPs and shared domains where a whole bunch of little clients all sit and share. And some of those clients have better practices than others. And so the reputation of those domains go up and down, which means sometimes inbox placement goes up and down, especially at Gmail. So in other words, long story short, one of the best things you can do to minimize your risk of Gmail spam folder placement is to make sure all the domain settings, SPF, DKIM, from address, etc., are all your domain and not a provider's domain. Like for ActiveCampaign, it's a good starting place to start with their default AC domains. Nothing wrong with that. But long term, if you want to make sure that you are the person in charge of your deliverability success, it's got to be your domain, not the provider's domain.
Got it. It says here that it's a pass for the list unsubscribed header. I had another provider that they're kind of newer on the market, and they claim they are like the Jedis of deliverability. But when I did that for a client on their service, it said the list unsubscribed header was missing. How bad is that?
So Gmail doesn't really sort of ding your score for that, thankfully. But what you do is you sort of end up with slightly more spam complaints versus unsubscribes. And since you don't have direct access to the spam complaints from Gmail, other ISPs have what they call a feedback loop. Like if you report spam at Yahoo or Hotmail or Comcast, that report comes back to the sending platform. Think of ActiveCampaign or Salesforce Marketing Cloud or whatever, so they can unsubscribe that person and log that report for you. Gmail does not offer that. They have this other thing they call a feedback loop. It causes a lot of confusion, but at the end of the day, they don't send spam complaints back. So if you don't have this list on subheader, and if somebody opens a message, doesn't want it, doesn't see an easy unsub link right at the top, which is what the list on subheader enables in Gmail and elsewhere, you're more likely to get spam complaint. So that's the goal there. It's a dotted line connection. That means if you have list on sub and you have a good reputation, and you're making it easier for people to unsubscribe, which means you're going to get fewer spam complaints, which means you're better guarding your reputation, in particular at Gmail, where you have lower visibility. You're lacking that visibility for spam complaints.
Got it. And guys, I put it up on the screen. Again, this is free. bemclick.com/spam checker. And as we were talking about this, the from email is not even a valid domain. It says, you say right here, warning, domain lacks valid ARMX record. And this provider said, oh,
Yep.
yeah, you shouldn't do that, but it's not that bad. You're okay. And then here we go. You're telling us there's not even a valid ARMX record. What are you talking about?
Yeah, they meant well. They're looking at it. They're making some assumptions based on what happens most of the time when somebody sends in their platform. But you got to check it. You actually got to check all the simple stuff when you're having trouble, and people miss that.
Cool. And the no demarc policy, I added that for them. Let's talk about that. So technically, no real bump in deliverability, but in reality, if you're preventing people from spoofing you and sending as you, then yeah, there's actually a bump. Is that accurate?
Exactly. It's you as the old guy. It's telling the kids to get off your lawn. It prevents them from pretending to be you. So that's helpful, but it's not like everybody's going to spoof your domain if you don't do it right. So maybe the risk is not super high, but it does happen. And if you had demarc in place, then it can happen. Especially, demarc's not like some $1 million thing. It's pretty easy to set up. And what you're doing with demarc at the end of the day is just affirming to the world that if mail says it's from me, that it's going to authenticate properly. So what's wrong with that? We do that, then authentication is going to help with inbox placement. Indirectly, again, it's one of those things. If you don't have it, you're going to have trouble. Just like demarc has that indirect help that people can't spoof you, and so a bad guy can't sort of screw up your domain reputation. So do it all together and make sure everything's authenticated properly. Should be easy enough to do, and you're going to get some side benefit. It's like I said, it's sometimes it's sort of like smoke detector, having a smoke detector or carbon monoxide detector. You need to have it just in case. You're not always going to have trouble, but when it goes off, you're really glad you have it.
Got it. Lastly, unless you think there's something else to discuss on here, let's talk about the warning. Found you're sending IP address on a block list.
Block lists are fun. So block lists are basically lists of IP addresses, spam filter IP addresses that the block list publisher thinks they've seen in spam. Now, block lists go back 25 plus years. I was one of the first block list runners myself way back in 1997 and 1998. Started right about the same time Spamhaus did. The difference between then and now is that spam filtering has greatly evolved, and so block lists are sort of a 1998 technology. Smarter block lists have sort of evolved over time. Like Spamhaus does a lot more stuff. They have a lot more thing that go into their filters and what causes them to blocklist somebody. It's not the same old school blocklisting that some of these other blocklists set up in 1998 or 2000 or 2003, and have just been running the same way for 20 plus years. So anyway, long story short, there are very few blocklists that are safe to use as spam filters and are used as spam filters, meaning you can find yourself on a block list, and there are some websites that are kind of guilty of this, where they tell you you're found on 30 block lists, you must be having problems. When fact of the matter is the blocklisting rarely has anything to do with any deliverability issue at all. This SPFBL, I know the person that started it up initially, not a bad person. There's nothing wrong with them tracking spam and publishing reputation feedback, but no big ISP uses SPFBL as a spam filter. You couldn't, because it's going to, any big retailer, online marketer is going to end up on these lists. So if you use this as your spam filter, like if you're Gmail and you use SPFBL as your spam filter, you're not going to get Amazon order receipts delivered. You're not going to get Target order receipts, order confirmations delivered. All this important stuff, because at this high level, anybody big enough hits these individual little spam trap addresses or runs afoul of these block lists. So it's more scare than anything else. There's only a couple exceptions, Spamhaus being the biggest exception there. If you're blocklisted by Spamhaus, you're going to have a huge bounce rate, and you're going to have huge deliverability problems. A lot of these other ones only matter either in some part of the world, like in small towns in Germany, in case you see eProtect. Some of them are kind of good early warning things, even though they don't really cause a lot of blocking, like Spam Cop. And then a lot of the other ones are frankly just not broadly used. And people are free to publish whatever they want. And, it's kind of a First Amendment thing of we think this IP is being used to send spam, or we think the sender's a spammer. But they're just not used for filtering, and they can't be safely used for filtering because they cause too much legitimate mail to be blocked.
Got it. So just to reiterate, are you saying that Spam Cop and Spam House are the two big ones that you should be looking out for?
Well, Spam House is probably the only one that I would really be like, oh my God, I got to stop what I'm doing and figure it out and fix it. But Spam Cop is a good one to monitor. Barracuda is another good one to monitor. Barracuda is primarily like B2B. They've got a robust sort of spam and security filtering thing. Again, their filter is not broadly used, but if you end up on there, that's good feedback to say, oh, I might have a list hygiene problem. Like I've got garbage lists and I need to clean something up. A lot of those other ones, like some of them, I don't even know where they're used. Like junk email filter. By the way, you should, if you ever want to fall down a hole, there's a guy named Mark Perkel who's since passed away, but he invented junk email filter, and he called himself the most dangerous mind on the internet. And he's got a website with about 1,000 different pages explaining why. And he created junk email filter. And so it's an interesting filter, but I don't think that you should care if you get listed by a junk email filter. I don't think it's not used by Comcast, not used by Hotmail, not used by Microsoft. It's only going to be little hobbyist sites and individual domains that sign up for that for a lot of those ones.
Got it. So again, guys, this is 100% free. bemclick.com/spam checker. Check it out, and let's go over the deliverability suite. Let me see here. I think I mentioned this to you in a chat, but regarding the domain warming and possibly getting blacklisted by using those services, I had brought that up in a forum, and somebody came up and said, "Oh no, I use this service," and I won't mention their name, but they perfectly replicate humans, and you won't get caught. Blah blah blah. I called my Google Workspace rep, and without even saying exactly what he said. Oh, and I actually went to the company and I asked them in chat, is like, do you guys use real humans? Are you like outsourcing to the Philippines to do this? Or are you using bots? And they said, well, we use bots, but we program them to act just like humans, blah, blah, blah. And what's funny is when I asked the Google Workspace support rep, she literally almost said word for word exactly how the company's rep explained it to me. So they knew exactly what they were doing. And she said, yes, this is against our terms of services. And I did a follow-up, and I said, okay, so let's just say you catch one of these companies with their bots in a Gmail spam account, and they're only interacting from emails from a specific sending domain. Is there a possibility that you could flag and penalize the end user of this company's domain services? And she's like, yes. If we catch them, if we detect them, they will get penalized as well.
Yep, and you get caught in the middle, right? You were just the dumb client thought you found a path to automate something, right? Your intent wasn't to be evil. You just wanted to get up and running to be able to send marketing email. And so you get sucked in because somebody else did something bad or set up something bad. And the thing is Google doesn't always catch it immediately, but they will catch it. And I've seen Google, I've seen Microsoft. Microsoft has sued people for doing that, for setting up fake accounts and going in there and clicking, this is not spam, for moving messages around. Yahoo has threatened to sue people doing it. Boy, there's a story I wish I could tell you. I'm probably under NDA that I can't tell you about Microsoft suing somebody for doing exactly that. And yeah, it only costs the guy $4 or $5 million at the end of the lawsuit to get out of it. But again, how many people did he rip off to say, hey, I can warm up your mail for you first? And those people didn't get sued, thankfully, but they didn't have a good result. And when Yahoo or Microsoft or Gmail blocked them.
Wow. Yeah, definitely buyer beware. So let's go over the main deliverability suite and what you have to offer at bemclick.com/kickbox.
Yeah, all right. So the nickel tour, I can do this in 60 seconds or less if I have to. So Kickbox has got a whole suite of deliverability tools. It starts with email verification, where we can help you identify good data versus bad data. So if you can even implement our verification API in your sign up and registration process to be able to reject bad addresses at sign up, keeping them out of your mail stream and to help improve deliverability success. If you're doing it in the API, you can do cool stuff too, like when we identify a typo address, we can actually suggest back, did you mean, and say, oh, did this person actually mean this address instead? You can offer it back to the subscriber and let them choose to correct it and fix it right on the fly. You can also identify, disposable addresses and free domains and that sort of thing. Risky. So there's a whole bunch of categories we do with like risky and whether we think something's going to be a problem for you. As well as whether or not it's valid or not. And so you'll find stuff where sometimes you've got to decide which categories you want to let through. Like if you just want to make sure you're only going to have the safest possible chances at deliverability success, you might take only that deliverable segment and not the others. Or if somebody is doing something where they're doing a double opt-in or transactional messages, they might let everything through except for stuff that we catch and know to be undeliverable. So that's what you do with email verification. Then we've got the whole deliverability side of things too, where we can do inbox testing, like we talked about a little bit, where we do actually do seedless testing. We give you a list of addresses, you send to them, and we generate a report for you. It tells you where your messages are going. Again, we talked about there's limitations in how that works, but that's the best you're going to get to be able to measure inbox placement, and it is significantly accurate over time to be able to trend and say, hey, I'm going to the inbox today, or I'm going to the spam folder tomorrow. See what's going on with regard to that. We've got block list monitoring, both for IPs and domains. You can set up DMARC monitoring so that you can watch to see who's trying to send mail as you. Make sure all of your own mail is authenticating properly. Catch it right before deliverability problems are going to start. Like if somebody accidentally deletes a domain from DNS, deletes the DKIM stuff that you need to authenticate mail from your ESP, the DMARC reports will spike, failures will spike, and you can use that tool to catch stuff like that. Other little bits and bobs in there too, like we pull in Microsoft SNDS data and Google Postmaster tools and some other good deliverability stuff. Also, we've got PreCheck, which is a render test based on email on assets. So that's handy if you want to make sure that messages are going to look right in all the different versions of Android and iOS mail, that sort of thing. And that's pretty much it. We can also do consulting too. I don't want to leave that out. So if you're stuck in a hole and need help getting back in the inbox and you want somebody to guide you and review everything you're doing, generate sort of an audit of where things are at and how to climb back to the inbox, we can help with that as well. So that's what we do in a nutshell, is deliverability stuff.
What if someone comes to you and says, yeah, I need help getting out of the Gmail promotions tab?
That's when I send them to you, and that's your problem. No, we actually talk them out of it. It's a waste of time. We don't take their money. That is a common question. I can think of a couple times that's come up here over all of the different consults we've done, that's where they start. They say we're going to the promotions tab when we're having trouble, but then you dive down in it. No, they're like you say. Right. Sometimes they're actually going to the spam folder and they don't realize it. Or they're actually going to the inbox and their open rates are fine. They're just not tracking things properly. They don't understand what they're looking at. They don't actually have a deliverability problem. Right. Now, there's a lot of stuff on my spam resource blog too, where we've been talking about how, don't fret over promotions tab placement. It's not going to impede your ability to make money from email.
Yeah, what's funny is that multiple times I've been on projects and someone brings up like, hey, this guy says that he can get us out of the Gmail promo tab and yada, yada, yada. Should we do it? And literally without saying anything, multiple other staff members will pop in and like, it's going to primary for me. It's going to primary for me. It's going to primary for me.
Yep, just goes to show, Gmail puts it where people want it, right? And so if people are giving the right feedback, you're going to be fine.
Yep. Guys, if you have any additional questions before we wrap up, fire away. I know we started a little bit late due to some technical difficulties, and we'll have to maybe do another one with just Jennifer.
Yeah, it'd be good for you to chat with her about the challenges around consulting and this kind of stuff, because
Sure.
it's a tough scene. People talk like people sometimes think deliverability is just all robots behind the scenes, deciding what email goes where, and nobody has any control over it. And they don't realize that there's a lot of people involved actually making decisions and giving guidance and helping with strategy and how to address this kind of stuff.
Sure. And guys, if I didn't mention it before, if you use bemclick.com/kickbox, you'll get 10% off. The code is BR marketing, but it should be submitted for you when using that link. And you also get 1,000 verification credits. And then I was just talking to someone that lives here in Conroe, Texas with me. They're former head of deliverability for Maropost. And we were talking about how, you were saying that the first thing some people say is like, hey, how do I get out of the Gmail promo tab? And he was just talking about everybody wants the magic bullet, and they don't realize that, deliverability is not sexy. And that's probably where the Gmail promo tag experts propped up, is because, hey, how can we make deliverability sexy? I know I have this one magic trick to get you out of the promo tab.
Exactly. Yeah, it's not sexy, but and there's a lot of people that don't know it. So good for me. Like I said, I made a career out of it. It's been, oh man, I've had my spam resource blog. Just the blog has been around for 22 years at this point. Just me talking about, it kind of evolved from spam filtering and blocking bad guys onto what became deliverability, which really nobody really used the term deliverability until 2003. So before that, we didn't even think of what to call this sort of thing.
Yeah, I'll have one last question if no one else has any. So let's talk about we talked about deliverability is not sexy, and a lot of digging into the data and stuff like that. But what are some things that you've seen that are definitive? Like I just got a testimony from Kendrick Cleveland. He's done persuasion for over 40 years, NLP. And he's literally on my testimony saying, what I appreciate about Jason is his honesty. I actually asked him, what specifically he did to improve our inbox placement and all that. And he said, honestly, it's a combination of things. There's no specific thing that I did. It's like, you had to increase your consistency. I made sure you were authenticated properly. I moved you to a better ESP that knew more about deliverability and had the better infrastructure in place. I optimized your email copy, and I got your subscribers replying more. So it was a combination of things. So what's your thoughts on that? And are there any specific scenarios where, yeah, you fix this, you're definitely going to get an increase?
Yeah, there's easy things you can do, and you touched on a lot of it there, right? You got to make sure all the technical ducks are in a row, right? From making sure all the authentication bits are set up properly, making sure that you're on a platform that actually takes care of their sending IPs and domains, so that you're not going to have a problem just because of the platform, right? It was weird, when I worked for one company for 15 years, those conversations can be kind of awkward. Where I can't really recommend that somebody go to a different platform. But now you look at it, there are different platforms for different needs, both from what they've managed from a deliverability perspective, and then also from a marketing automation perspective, right? So you've got to decide what's the right platform for you to be able to make it so that you can succeed in the way you want to succeed. And so it's kind of weird where, some people sort of overbuy and go with a really high-end, super expensive platform when all they want to do is send newsletters twice a week. Like you're overpaying, and you should be on MailChimp. Right. So you start from the technical considerations, make sure everything is configured right. You make sure you're on the right platform. And then if there's the one thing that you need to do to boost deliverability success, that's boost engagement. Make sure the emails are compelling. Make sure you're suppressing unengaged subscribers, not keeping around dead weight in your email list. And then make sure you've got actually wanted mail. People recognize you. They want the emails from you, and you have a compelling call to action. So it's just all about So technology settings, making sure you're on the right platform, and then driving engagement. Those are sort of like those are the sort of the top three things, right? You dig deeper into each of those, and there's complex stuff underneath them, but that's kind of the high level of it, I think.
Right. And when you offer consulting as well, so let's just say they sign up at bemclick.com/kickbox, and they're either measuring their inbox placement and they're making sure they're not getting spam bots and bad, non-functioning emails on their list, and then they're like, what the heck? My Gmail placement is so much better after a few months. My Yahoo placement is better. Oh my gosh, MSN's better. That's great. But what the hell? Like, my list is comprised of a lot of middle-aged Southern people that are using Comcast and Time Warner, and the inbox placement is horrible. Can you help?
Yeah, we can with stuff like that. And in a lot of cases, people who are using our tools to test and monitor, we're always happy to answer questions, even if they're not specifically hiring us to do consulting. I look at it like this. If you will come to me and say, hey, I'm blocked at Comcast, what should we do about it? If you want to tackle that, I will point you in the right direction. I'll show you the guide that we use, that we built, and where do you go to fill out the form, how do you ask for help, etc. If you want us to manage that for you, actually doing the reach out on your behalf, explaining who you are to the ISPs or going through the different processes, then bring it back around to that. We can do a paid consulting engagement. So even, we're happy to do all that stuff for you. We can make your plan that says, here's how you address all these different things that we see in this testing and what's going wrong. Or even without that, we're always happy to answer questions and point people in the right direction. There's always, some people, it depends on how big of a sender you are and what your email ROI is. Some people, if they're $1 million senders, then yeah, we definitely want your money. Pay us so that we can have an ongoing consulting engagement for you. But even for the smaller people that still need deliverability help, we're there and happy to answer questions.
Yeah, definitely. You've been a great help for me and my clients, so I really appreciate it.
I dread your questions because they're always really good. You've already figured out the obvious stuff. So if you hit me up and chat with a question, I know it's going to be something complex and I'm actually going to have to research it.
Oh, good. All right, guys, if there's no further questions, Al, I really appreciate it. Oh, do you have time for one more question?
Sure.
So for argument's sake, let's just say that your image hosting link, there's no blacklist, there's nothing wrong with it. Are any of the big email providers saying, oh, they have images, let's dock them a point, and let's use that in whether we're deciding whether to put them into spam or not?
I don't think so, but I have seen ghost block listings of some image hosting domains. Like even for my own newsletter, I was using Google user content, which is one of the Blogger domains. So my blog runs on Blogger, and so I use that to host images, and I'm using that to host images for my email newsletter as well. And that ended up causing spam folder problems for me at Gmail. Even though Gmail owns Blogger, they got to know what their own stuff is. So I nowadays, so much email is image based that I don't think anybody's going to ding your spam score just because it's heavily image based. You might run into accessibility issues that in theory could affect unsubs. If it's hard for somebody to unsub, they're more likely to report spam. But I don't think there's much of a correlation there. I don't think it's unsafe to have broadly image-based messages.
Yeah, I'm speaking more of like single images, like with an actual purpose to get the click and hosted by your ESP where you're authenticated already.
Yeah, I think you're good there. I think, basically, if there was any big problem there, it would be so much broader, and I think the ESPs would be struggling with it. Yeah, I think it's just you run into the weird one-offs where one specific domain or like, sometimes an ISP would get mad if you were linking to PhotoBucket or, one of those random image sites.
Right.
But nothing broad. Using your ESP's image hosting for that should be safe. It was definitely safe in my experience on the big platforms I've worked on. And you see all the big brands are basically primarily hosting their images that way and are doing just fine.
Got it. All right, guys. Again, bemclick.com/kickbox to check out Kickbox Deliverability Suite, and bemclick.com/spam checker for a free spam score test. Wow, this has been great, Al. I appreciate it, and have a great day.
You too, Jason. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.